topic of licensure, where we'll be talking a little bit about the ins and outs of the licensure and licensure process. But before we get started, I would like all of our panelists to introduce themselves. So I have you in the order that I got your emails. So I will be going first in that order, and then we'll be mixing it up as the panel goes on. But yeah, so to start off with just introductions, who you are, any other information you want to share, firm you work for, or whatnot. We'll start with Morgan.
Sorry, everyone. I had to unmute myself. You'd think that I'd be used to it by now. Hey, I'm Morgan Robinette. I graduated from KU 2017, I think, at this point. I recognize several of you on here. I'm working for AIAS in Kansas City right now, and I became licensed July of this year.
Hi, everybody. I'm Larry Valenza, and I'm principal at M&H Architects in St. Louis. I graduated from KU. I can tell by looking at the pictures that I'm the old guy in the group. I graduated in 1988, and I've been licensed I got licensed in Missouri first in 1992, and now I'm licensed in 16 states.
All right, did you say my name? Because I couldn't hear. Okay, hi. All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Melanie, and just like Morgan, it's nice to see some familiar faces. Hi, Katie. Hi, Colin. I graduated also in 2017 from the MARC program, and I've been in San Francisco since with HDR, working as a lab planner and a design coordinator for science and technology in healthcare buildings. I got involved with licensure soon after through the NCARB think tank when I got to participate on their education committee and travel with them. So that was a lovely experience to be on the inside. I am not licensed. I'm taking my exams at the moment, and I had a significant 2-year impasse in the studying because of immigration. I had to leave the country temporarily. Was dealing with a lot of immigration issues, and that put a pause in my licensing process. But I'm back in the country now and just passed my third ARE a few weeks ago.
Yeah, all right. Hi, everybody. My name is Colin Thompson. Like Morgan and Melanie, I went to KU, graduated with the MARC in 2017, stayed at KU and completed a master's in urban planning that I finished in 2018. I've been with BRR Architecture ever since, started off in our Kansas City office and then relocated out here to Seattle, where I am a project manager for our hospitality team, coordinating clients and projects from Florida out to Washington State. So started my licensure process in February of 2019 and finished all my exams and got my license in Washington State in February of this year, 2020.
Hey guys, I'm Katie Beckwith. I'm also at BRR Architecture with Colin. I graduated in 2016 and I started in BRR's Kansas City office and then moved down to Austin, Texas, January of 2017. That's when I started studying. And I just got licensed a year ago now, last October.
Awesome. Well, now we all kind of know our panelists. We're going to start off with a pretty simple question. I don't imagine many of you will have differing answers. But what exactly is licensure? And this time we'll go in reverse order. So if Katie, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so just basically licensure is what allows you to call yourself an architect. Every state has slightly different rules, but NCARB is kind of the golden standard. And so you have to go through a process of first getting an accredited degree. Second is gathering all of your experience hours under the supervision of a licensed architect. And the third step is passing all of the licensure exams, and the last two can be done at the same time. But really, it just allows you to call yourself an architect, to stamp your drawings, and yeah, that's a pretty brief summary.
Okay, yeah. Did anyone have anything they wanted to add to what it means to be licensed?
I'll just add, as a principal of a firm, it's important for us to have licensed professionals, especially. We made a rule in our office, or a policy in our office, that you can't progress to project manager unless you're a licensed architect, because we want our PMs. We want our clients to know that the manager that we put in charge of their project is a licensed architect that's got that credential. It gives a whole another level of credence to your qualification. So I think it's something that you go to school for 5 or 6 years or more sometimes, and you put a lot of money into your education, and to not take that next step and get to that final licensure plateau, I think it's something that should be on everybody's horizon.
Yeah, I would echo what Larry says. A lot of firms do have a policy where you have to be licensed in order to get to that project manager, associate, principal level. So it is a pretty big item to have in the progression of your career from coming out of school up to, wherever that trajectory is that you want to end up. The other thing to note, too, that I think is important is that having your license brings a whole other professional standard of care that you have to meet as you're practicing architecture in the profession. So alongside the title and the stamp comes a little bit more responsibility and legal oversight and requirements that you have to provide just working on projects day to day and ensuring that you're providing that adequate standard of care for your clients.
All right. Awesome. I think I got a different mic to work better. Can everyone hear me fine? Awesome.
Yes. It works much better. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So all of those great things, and you guys seem to have touched a little bit on future questions already, jumping ahead. But we'll go to, aside from what you've already mentioned, are there any other benefits you find with being licensed? And I know you guys kind of touched on anything. If anyone wants to take the reins with the first one, feel free to jump on it.
So I think, as Katie mentioned, it's the only way to legally call yourself an architect. It also sets you apart from other graduates early on. A lot of people, and I sympathize with this, take a while to get licensed because life and professional obligations get in the way. I mean, they certainly did for me. But it is just something that will set you apart from your peers, especially early on. And then, as Larry mentioned, it distinguishes you to clients and gives you an added level of can't think of the word I'm thinking of, just an added level of credibility, I would say, to your projects. Also, I just found studying for the examinations, I actually learned quite a bit of information that I didn't learn in school that actually really helped me day to day in the job and also set me apart from my peers. So just studying for the exams was really a learning experience on its own that was really beneficial.
I think everyone has just done an excellent job of summarizing how licensure can set you apart in the profession. Definitely, everyone has talked has emphasized strongly about credibility, right? And I think the second thing is like Morgan said, that was my first response, is that I've just learned so much through studying for the exam. It has filled the gaps with the college education I had from KU, albeit I'm still very grateful for the architecture education I had at KU. Definitely it supplements and standardizes what I need to know as an architect and makes me I'm just a lot more confident in what I'm doing at work daily. And I have this is why you do it. This is the exact process. This is what AIAS says. This is what NCARB says. It actually, it definitely establishes the standard of care. And it has also helped me become a good mentor to incoming young professionals. And that's why I'm always going to be a strong proponent of get licensed as soon as you can.
Yeah, and not additional, like you knowing your stuff about architecture, like Morgan said, you learn so much just by studying. I felt like it made me a better coordinator with our consultants on mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structure. I wish I would have read the section on like refrigeration design day one, because I work on grocery stores, and that would have been very helpful information. And so, yeah, it gives you a leg up on everything, I feel like.
Awesome. Well, since you guys are already talking about the exams, we have a whole slew of questions regarding them. But our first one is, when approaching the exams, is there one you would recommend looking into taking first, or is there a specific order we might want to look into taking them? And anyone can take the reins with this one if you'd like.
If I may go, I found personally for me taking the professional practice batch of exams first, like more manageable. Again, I can't really give a complete answer. I will be biased because I'm still studying for the second half. Then again, that being said, okay, sorry, let me step back. So there's 6 exams in all, and then you have practice management, project management, and construction evaluation. And I find not so much in a specific order, but for studying for exams together, I found that really helpful because of the overlapping information. And I'll let my peers speak to that.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, I actually had to pull up the list of tests here just to make sure I'm saying them right. But I actually started off with programming and analysis. I think one of the big things I would recommend to students coming up or professionals starting to take tests is to really leverage the experience that you have in the field. So if day to day in the office you're doing a lot of schematic design, programming analysis is going to feed really well into the work and the knowledge that you're learning in the field and in practice. And so really starting off with programming analysis, it was really easy for me to take a project from that schematic design phase through construction documents, and then through CA with the construction and evaluation phase. And those tests really kind of overlapped fairly substantially for me in 5.0. The knowledge and the material, it just kind of gets more and more in-depth as you go throughout those processes. I think that practice and project management really were more so based off of contracts and budgets and really how to maintain and manage a project and a client. And so I think that coming out of school, that's something that I didn't really have a whole lot of experience with. And so I really benefited putting those off until my last 2 exams, just so that I had time to get acquainted with those kind of contracts, proposals, and language in the field.
Yeah, just to add quickly to Colin, I think the better order is really extremely subjective, and it should correlate with the work experience you have. Like on the opposite of Colin, I'm actually studying for PA at the moment, but I took the pro practice exams right out of school because CA was something I got into very immediately. I've been doing CA for 2 years now constantly, and so that came very naturally to me. The first 3, project practice and construction evaluation. So that's why I attempted those first.
I agree with. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to say that I agree with Melanie and Colin. I think the order of the exams really is sort of almost personal and subjective. I will say that I'm pretty involved, or was at the time pretty involved in AIA Kansas City, and they have a study group for the AIA exams. For the NCARB exams. And the order that they decided to do it this year was practice and project management first, then construction and evaluation, because the contracts on construction and evaluation overlap the project management exam. And then the next one was programming analysis, followed by PPD, which is project planning and design, because project planning and design has some programming on it. And then the last one was PDD, which is project development documentation. But that's just what AIAKC did this year, but it's subjective.
I'm probably the worst one to answer this question because I took it so long ago that when I took the test, They offered it once a year in June, and you studied for all 7 parts, plus there was seven parts plus a 12-hour building design, and you took it over 4 days. And if you failed, then you waited till the following year to take the part that you failed over again. So it was a lot of cramming, a lot of remembering things all together, and go in and try to take it all at one time. And I think you guys are at a great advantage to be able to kind of nibble away at it, study for one section, take it, pass it, go on to the next one. I think that's a lot. I don't know that it's easier, but I think it just makes more sense than trying to cram for it all and take it all at one time. So what I see with the young people in our office is there's a lot of interdependence on one another. So they'll take tests that are more in keeping with their level of experience or what they're doing. We also have a professional development program in the office that everybody participates in, whether you've been working for 40 years or you've been out of school for 4 months. And that allows us to make sure that everybody's getting, because you can practice architecture for 1,000 years and not know everything. So there's always something more to learn. And so it helps us with the younger people to be able to focus on areas that they need focus on in order to take that next exam. So we can be very intentional with our people to keep them involved in a project from beginning to end, which helps, instead of being just doing CDs all the time. And that's all you ever do, that you get in on those early stages, early client contact. Contract review is terribly important to be involved in and be familiar with. And then all the way through construction administration. So if you can get on a team or a project where you can stay with it from beginning to end, you kind of learn everything you need to know for the test. So I think it really helps, really, just to be in a situation, and when you're looking out of school at firms to join, ask those kind of questions to make sure that you get in a situation that's conducive to getting licensed, rather than getting pigeonholed. And I'm the guy that does stair details every day for 3 years. We have a kind of a saying in our office when we interview people. We're looking for people with 4 years of experience and not 1 year of experience 4 times. That doesn't give you any kind of growth. So I think kind of getting yourself into a firm that it lends itself to passing the test will make it easier.
Yeah. Awesome. Great introduction, kind of the test itself, as well as answering that question of what order. It seems like it is very subjective. But start talking a little bit more about time. Obviously, all of you are advocates for taking it as soon as possible. But what are your thoughts or experiences on taking the tests or starting to study with them within school? Is this something that you would recommend students do, or do you think it's something that they should maybe hold off, just finish their degree, and focus a little bit more then? And we can go ahead and start with Larry, and then we'll wrap around to everyone else.
I think it's great to be able to start when you're in school. I mean, why not get a head start on it? It seems like when you're in school that you're so busy and you've got studio and you've got all your classes and there's no time for anything, and you want time to, go to the Hawk and drink with your buddies and all that kind of stuff. But if you can get a head start on it in school, I can tell you that life just gets busier the farther you get into it. And you graduate and you start working long hours because it's that kind of profession. And, you get married and you have kids and life happens. And so the sooner you can get it out of the way, the better off you are. Plus, you're still in the mode of studying, because the farther you get removed from school, the farther you get removed from study mode. And so I think it's easier while you're kind of in that habit of studying and you've got good study habits, that's the time to do it.
Awesome. If we want to jump over to Melanie to build on that a little bit more on your thoughts of studying this in school or waiting till after.
To be honest with you, frankly, confused as to what would be the best approach. I actually have a good, I'd say now she's a friend now. I know of this girl who is at a university down in San Diego, and she and I were sort of studying for our last ARE together. And she was, which was CE, Construction Evaluation, and this was a month ago. And she is at the moment studying, but then also interning, and then trying to take the AREs as well. And I think she's in her final year. And I just knew from the very beginning, I could not imagine myself. I don't know about, you, Colin, and Morgan, and Katie. I could not imagine with, having the course load that I had at KU and interning at the same time, which I did in the last couple of years, and taking the AREs on top of that. I just don't think I personally had the bandwidth for that. So I was really impressed that she was taking that on, and she was, very, determined to start the licensure as soon as possible. And I agree with that. However, I think because of so many things going on, because of so many moving pieces, unfortunately, she didn't pass any of the 3 exams that she attempted. The first 3, she thought she would take them during this summer in early fall. And I think part of it was that she had all these things going on. She's working on, studio and thesis, and also is interning. So it's a time factor, because you can only put your attention in so many places at the same time. Work, my full-time job and studying is enough for me. I couldn't imagine going to school on top of that. So that's one thing. And then the second thing I think, which might have played against her favor, was the kind of exams, right, that she chose. She chose the PCM, PJM, and CE, but she has little to no experience at work. And for me, that is super, let's say easy, but, significantly easier for me than her, because I'm, constantly reviewing specs, submittals, RFIs on a daily basis, as opposed to her just seeing it on an exam question. I'm not having any real life. For me, it comes really easy. So when I'm in the pressure of an exam, I know exactly what to look at and, apply certain code to it without even thinking oh, this is what I need to think about, So I think, unfortunately, unless you seem to have a course load that you can really manage and you're not interning at the time, then yes, you could say, hey, this semester I can focus on passing this particular ARE. Since neither of us here have had the opportunity to experience that or take an ARE during our college life, I cannot fairly say, how that would be, what that would pan out. But I know that it's all about time management. Personally, for me, I think I would not be able to tackle it. That being said, one thing that I wish, one thing that I could tell people who are doing that at the moment is that some of the resources that we that were recommended for some of our KU classes in 3rd year, 4th year are actually used for the exam. So if I could go back to Melanie in 3rd year and tell her, read it properly, don't just skim through it, pay attention. Just because Professor Neal said, you'll be fine, and it doesn't mean, I would have told myself, hey, read it, because this is actually going to show up on the exam 3 years from now. And hold on to those resources. Don't just think you don't need it, or borrow, rent it, and give it away. That is the one thing I would say about those resources. You definitely need to touch them again. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe because I agree with you, Melanie. I don't know if I would have had time to study, except for maybe my last semester when things get a little bit lighter and you're focused on job searching. But it may be the program, and I can't remember what it's called, where students would go off and intern for a semester. Maybe that would be an opportunity to do some studying at the same time, because you're really just interning and not like on campus going to classes necessarily. So, but the whole thing about like start studying as soon as you can, I think is, to Larry's point, like the farther you wait, the more life gets in the way and your responsibilities at work start to grow. And sometimes that means your free time diminishes, not always. I definitely saw that. I saved the biggest tests for last, PPD and PDD, and it literally took me almost, I think, 6 months to pass both of those. And it came down to me having to lock myself in my apartment every weekend for like 2 months to pass those tests, on top of going to work all week. So I think that's where the whole like just start as soon as you can, like trust us on it, comes from.
Colin or Morgan, do you have anything you want to add to what was been said?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, it's definitely a time management thing, whether or not you want to start while you're in school. I think for me personally, when I was in my normal semesters, I was taking 19 to 21 credit hours, and it would just not have been feasible for me to study for an exam. But I could have potentially studied while I was doing that internship program, or maybe over the summer. And then again, like to Katie's point, and Melanie's point, I think it depends on which exams you choose. Like if you try to do PDD and PPD during school, I think you might probably have a hard time, versus if you start with like programming and analysis, which a lot of it is covered in school, and that one might be a little bit better one to start off with. So that's what I would recommend.
Just to quickly add to Morgan's point, I want to highlight a specific resource that current college students could look at, and that's the AIA Architects Handbook of Professional Practice. I think that's like the starting Bible for the project management and practice management exams. If I faintly remember, our pro practice class included that as a resource. So I think was it fourth year, guys? I think it was fourth year. I think that would be a good time for someone, if they're going through the book anyway, just to also start looking at questions for PCM and PJM. Mm-hmm. And that would make everything just significantly more manageable.
Yeah, I think there are opportunities for that to align. I tried to take my first test August after I graduated from the MArch program while I was interning and I guess summer working full-time at BRR, and then kind of getting ready for my MVP program. And I did not pass that test, and it just kind of shut me down, and I just waited until, I was done with school to start testing. So I definitely agree with and echo the comments that, testing, whether you're interning full time and just trying to wrap your head around, getting acclimated to the profession, or being a full-time student is a big course load to take on and a big endeavor. I actually would kind of counter everyone's comments about starting as soon as you get out of school or as early as you can. I think there's a lot in practice that you learn just by doing drawings and picking up red lines and going through the process of construction documents that you're not going to learn from reading a book, and a lot of things that I would have gotten wrong on the exams had I tried to take it right after school. So I think it's really about finding that sweet spot where you feel comfortable enough that you've had a lot of experience in the field to be able to go in comfortably and confidently to the exams, rather than just being able to kind of resuscitate book paragraphs, because a lot of the questions are really more about applying concepts and applying code interpretation to the questions, rather than just being able to memorize and recite things that you've read.
One of the funny things that happens in our office is a lot of the younger people that are taking the exams will will come to me or some of the other older guys, and they'll say, hey, there's this question on the exam or on the practice test or whatever, and it says this, and they read it off, and to us, there's so many variables that we've lived and we've dealt with. It's like, well, the answer could be this if this is the circumstance, but it could be that if this is the circumstance. So you can almost get to the point where you know too much and you overcomplicate the thing, So you're right. There is, Cullen, there's a sweet spot that in there that's where you know it well enough to answer the question, but you don't get bogged down in the minutia of what it could all mean.
Yep.
Yeah, I had people.
I totally agree with you, Larry.
I had lots of people tell me, like, the answer is call your engineer.
I would say, I think one of the big things that I really gained from taking that first exam before I was ready was really just getting an understanding of how the test works and how the test functions and what they're trying to get at with the questions. That's half the battle, is just, figuring out how it works, how it operates, going through that process. It may be totally different now that they're starting to allow testing from home. So maybe that's an easier process to be able to just jump in, take a test, and figure it out, get your feet wet. But I definitely think there's value to just kind of, even if you don't pass, getting the experience of going through the process of taking an exam.
All right, awesome. I love the conversation from that question. Our next question, with specifically regards to the ARE exams, how much of the information for the ARE exams do you feel you learned in school versus how much of it do you feel like you need to have professional practice for? And we will jump in kind of reverse order and start with Cullen and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of just touched on this to some extent, right? I think that a lot of the things that I learned more so on the job were really about how to apply the code towards building practices. So looking at setbacks, looking at allowable building square footages, looking at allowable building heights. I mean, maybe I just didn't pay enough attention in school to those conversations and discussions, but that was something that I really just learned more so, having to do those calculations for life safety plans. So, yeah. I think like we talked about earlier, I think it's just a sweet spot balance of how you learn best and trying to figure out how to maneuver those as you go through testing.
Yeah, I don't know if, I can't remember the name of the class, but for us, Niels Gore taught it, and it was a lot about, like, site design and studying the site and different climates and different techniques to apply to different climates. That was, I felt like, a big part of, I took it in 4.0, so it had a different name, I think Programming and Analysis.
Yep.
And I literally grabbed one of the books that we had for that class off my bookshelf, and that had the answers that I needed. So like site design and like soils and stuff like that. That one I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on because of KU.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think programming and analysis, a lot of it comes from coursework at KU. Construction and evaluation, I pretty much solely drew from experience and a little bit of studying, but I even if I had studied for it a lot, I don't think I would have fully understood the process if I hadn't actually done it. That being said, a lot of what's on the exams, even if you don't cover it in school or if you haven't reached it in practice, it doesn't mean that you can't learn it. I did a lot of that, like practice management, learned a little bit in school, but really dove into it when studying for that exam. Same with project management. It's kind of a balance again of like experience helps, but you don't necessarily, in my opinion, have to wait until you're an expert to start getting into it and start learning. I will say that project planning and design and PDD is just like a dump truck load of information that even if you had covered a lot of it in school, you probably are not going to remember it all. So I wouldn't be afraid to just, start teaching yourself and be open to learning that.
My experience, again, being the old guy in the group, is probably different than all of yours, but I think the practical work experience was huge for me. And I think I started in a very small firm, five-man office. And that experience of doing that, because basically you have to do everything because there's nobody else to do it. And you get thrown in and it's sink or swim. You have to learn it, and there's support there from the older. We had a 75-year-old principal. We had two 32-year-old guys that were kind of like right in the middle of their they were young, but they were developed enough that they had all the answers for me. So there was never anybody, and then there was me and one other guy about my age. And so I had support, but I really had to learn to figure stuff out on my own. And I think that the theoretical part of school doesn't apply to the exam as much as the practical part of work. And so I think that the work experience does help supplement what you learned in school. A lot of times what you learned in school was the right stuff. It just didn't make sense to you because you didn't have a practical application for it. And so that, to me, the work experience was huge. And we had to wait 3 years minimum before we could even take the test. So we didn't have a choice. So I got 3 years of experience just because that's what I had to do. So there was a benefit to that.
Melanie, anything you want to add to that, or all around agreement?
Thank you, Lydia, for attending. So I agree with everybody. It really is about that happy balance. I'll just give you one specific example. As I mentioned, I've had a long break in my studying because of the circumstance that was out of my control. I had to leave the country due to immigration issues and then come back only when the U.S. government was ready to give me a visa. And so I came back in the beginning of this year, shortly before the lockdowns. As a result, I was not able to test right in the beginning when I got back. I was feeling very motivated, very excited to start studying and continue the process where I had left it, but I couldn't until the test centers reopened. So the specific example I want to give is so the first year that I graduated from KU and moved ER and started working, that was 2017 to 2018. I took the PCM, PJM, passed them right before I had to leave the country, and I had CE scheduled, but I had to cancel it because it was past the date I had to leave the country. And so I tried taking it in the test center in Dubai because that was the closest to me at the moment. So I moved to Oman in the Middle East, where I'm originally from, and so I had to fly to another country to take the test. Ridiculous and very difficult, very expensive. I was not working. All in all, I had just started CA. I had really, I would say, about 4 months of CA experience at that time. I found the exam hard, actually. When I took the test, I even though I had a good knowledge of contracts from passing the previous two related exams, it just didn't come to me easily. And then now that I'm back in the country and resumed, and I've been full-time CA since I've returned, I took CE after a month of studying. So like Colin was explaining, there is that relationship with the experience and then also with how much time you devote to that exam. If you've had enough experience and you feel comfortable, and automatically, that's inversely proportional to how much time you would spend on that exam. So this time I took CE a month ago and passed it really easily after a month. Yes, I did go, like Katie was mentioning, lockdown in my apartment, cut down events, a bit easier to do with, widespread lockdown. So, no social distractions as much, I'd say. But yes, I still had to find a good balance with my workload and study. But I would say the process of taking the exam, everything was significantly easier. Things came very easily to me. And so that's why I think it's just, again, very subjective. And I found that taking the exam 2 years later after I had experience was much better for me.
All right. Well, now that we have a better understanding of the ARE and some of the tips you guys suggest, we're going to flip it to the other part of licensure, one of the other prominent parts, which is AXP hours. Do any of you have tips on how to gain AXP hours efficiently? And we can go ahead and start with Morgan on this one.
Sure. So for me, I've been working since I graduated in 2017 at a small firm, and I have been involved in every phase of every project. So that really helped me get experience in all the different areas. So really from the very beginning, like I'm working on programming, I'm working on design, and then I follow a project all the way through project management and construction. So I sort of got my hours almost evenly, kind of at the same time. I have friends that are working at much larger firms, and I think it's a lot different experience. Not to say it's good or bad. I just think that maybe they work only for like initial phases of design for a month or several months or a year, and then they move to a different phase of a project. Yeah, so for me, I was able to kind of take on every role almost, because like Larry said, there's no one else to do it. So
yeah, when we came out with the policy that you have to be licensed to be a PM, we went for years. I worked at my first firm, the little firm, for 14 years. And then I got to the point where I grew as much as I could grow there, and I needed something bigger and better. And then I went to the firm I'm at now, and I've been there 18 years. And when I made the switch, we had 6 licensed architects. I was the sixth one to go in, and we were about a 25-man firm. And for about, I'm going to say a good 12 years, it was the same 6 licensed architects in that firm, because it wasn't important to that company to have licensed architects. And so it wasn't important to the firm, so it wasn't important to the employees. And so when we switched gears and we said, you really have to get licensed, we're encouraging you to get licensed, we came out with an incentive program, and it was time-based. And so we have a program that if you get your license within 4 years of graduation, you get a $5,000 bonus. And if you get it within 5 years, you get a $4,000 bonus. And if you get it within 6 years, you get a $2,500 bonus. And if it takes you more than 6 years, you get a pat on the back and an attaboy. But front-loading the money really made it more important to people. I mean, and it's important to us. We're happy to pay it if they can go through the process and get it. And so I think it just highlights the fact that if you're in a firm that it's important to, it's going to be a lot easier, and they're going to find opportunities for you to get your AXP hours, because it's a corporate thing as much as it is a personal thing. And if you're in a firm that it doesn't matter, you're going to struggle to get your experience.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Larry. I mean, I think one of the best things you can do when you're interviewing for internships or full-time positions is just to ask the question. I had the opportunity to, like Morgan was saying, take a project and work on it from schematic all the way through until, punch. And that has been incredibly invaluable in order to, my success with my AREs. So asking those questions is something that's really going to show, one, that you're dedicated towards getting licensed, you're dedicated towards your career growth, and you're dedicated towards serving that firm and increasing its business and its product quality. So I think that that's a critical question to ask. The other thing I would encourage you to ask too is what resources the firm has for licensure. You know, BRR offers time off to take tests. We have study materials. I'm sure Larry M&H has very similar resources for people who are studying and looking to get licensed. So there's nothing wrong with asking those questions. There's nothing wrong about asking about what those incentives are and how the firm is able to support you achieving that goal of being licensed.
Yeah, I'd echo what Colin said. There was a time where I was mostly working on CDs because I was right out of school, and I think I was studying for the contract test. And our principal was like, "You want to know about contracts? Okay, let's sit down and review the contract for the project that you're working on, because it makes you better at you working on that project." And so, yeah, finding a firm that is dedicated to supporting it and having people on your project team that you can go to and say, "Well, I filled all my CDs hours. Now I need CA." And then like, "Well, come with me to this punch walk next week and get some hours." So, yeah, that is where firm support is pretty crucial.
Melanie, do you have anything you want to add with AXP hours?
Yeah, sure. Personally, I started earning my AXP hours primarily through internships throughout college. I interned 4 times throughout college, and so I was very ahead in that respect. And I say that as a comparison to the young professionals, the young graduates that are joining my firm at the moment. A lot of them haven't either started their NCARB record or which is surprising to me because it's, free and available during college. And then a lot of them also, are just very young in terms of their hours. So I was almost, I think, about 70-80% complete with my hours prior to graduating, just from the amount of internships that I had done. And then by the time we got to the final internship in the co-op year, it really, that's a big one. However, as my peers are mentioning, the most important thing is the diversity of experience, to be making sure that you're getting all those categories equitably filled. And that really stems from a conversation, an open conversation with your hiring manager, with your mentor. And then also just seeing from the work that you do and know maybe the work that you need is definitely not, most likely it's not on the project you have, but, in the next conversation, grab a cup of coffee with your advisor. And I think one thing that I had done in the very beginning of my start year at HDR, and something I recommend to incoming grads here, is that maybe print out that portion of the AXP guidelines and show them and say, this is the category that I'm lacking in, and this is the kind of, the NCARB actually has that helpful guideline list, and you can say, okay, these checklist boxes, and say, I'd like to gain experience in any of these. Do you see that your project or any of upcoming projects might have such availability for me? And then obviously with their staffing, they're not going to be able to grant your request immediately, but they'll keep that in mind. And definitely over the next couple of months, you might see yourself being moved accordingly to that project to accommodate your performance goal. I like to think that our mentors here have our best interest at heart, and we usually will make that happen.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it looks like we have time for one more question. So we're going to go with one that's not necessarily directly towards AXP or ARE, but is there any experience, any one experience or skill you learned by going through the licensure process that did not pertain to the exams, whether it's something like time management, workflow, collaboration, anything that you felt additionally the test taught you that may not have been written out on the tests. And whoever, it seems like this one is causing a lot of thought-provoking faces. So whenever you're ready, just jump in.
Yeah, I can go. I think probably the biggest thing that I found throughout the test taking process, and maybe it's not something that I learned, but a side benefit, I guess I can say, is that it really helped me develop relationships with my coworkers in the office, whether that be mentors, principals, CEO, having the opportunity to just walk in a door and ask a question and pick somebody's brain on how they would handle a certain, a certain problem, a certain situation, really opens doors for conversations and mentorships, and really getting to have those relationships with your coworkers down the road. So I would encourage that, as you all are kind of studying and going through that process, just ask questions, because 9 times out of 10, everybody's going to be super excited to answer your questions and let you pick their brain and just work with you on your process.
Yeah. So similar to what Cullen was saying, actually, after graduation, I joined the AIA Kansas City study group. I think they call it like the success team or something. And I actually made quite a few friends from that I'm still really close with now. And that friend group has kind of just evolved and expanded. And it's sort of been my main friend group in Kansas City because of that. So it's just kind of been an amazing side benefit, almost better than getting licensed. Better better than getting licensed. Just going through that process and meeting new people and reaching out that way.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very bonding experience. One of my coworkers and I actually had, we scheduled the same test on the same day. So we were both heading towards the same goal. They actually sat us right next to each other, which was nerve-wracking in the testing center. So yeah, bonding over just the frustrations of studying for an exam for sure. I think it also kind of encouraged me to be curious about things that I may not necessarily think I needed to know to execute a project. But I might need to know something down the line, and that applies to my coworkers and people that I'm working under, and my principals and stuff. But it also applies to consultants, calling up an MEP engineer and asking about the nitty-gritty details, and whether you understand it or not, it's good to be curious about that kind of stuff. We even actually had a structural engineer offer to come in and tutor us on how to do structural calculations, and he did that, and it created a new relationship for our team, having a structural engineer we could call with any question that we needed. So yeah, probably the networking and people aspect of having to go through this process together.
Well, I've heard a lot, and those are all great things to take away from the testing process. And I've heard a lot of external stuff. I'm going to go the other way, and internally, the sense of accomplishment and the sense of self-esteem that you get from passing those tests, because it's a difficult thing to do. And to feel like, boy, I succeeded, I did something that not everybody can do, is a great feeling. And then you carry that into your career, and you approach projects as an advocate for the client, and you're not an order taker. Nothing would be worse than going to work every day and just asking a client, what do you want? And then you put it on the drawing, so that you actually bring value. You can give advice. You understand their business, and you can, you have the credentials behind you to say that, I'm here to be your advisor. I don't want you to make a mistake. I'm going to give you options and alternatives to think about. And that's the reward of the career. It's anybody can draw a detail and get it right, but to understand the bigger picture and be an advocate for the client, and that's what this credential gives you the opportunity to do.
I just think, to quickly summarize, I think I agree with every single thing everyone has mentioned here, from the social aspect of the support for the exams, and also that sense of accomplishment. I just want to emphasize that when you do not pass an exam, that is totally fine, and it's every at some point it's going to happen to everyone, And, you know, there are times that I failed an exam and just like mocked about it for a month. And that is something that the exam testing process has taught me, how to be, you know, okay with not learning and get back up and keep asking questions. Like Katie was mentioning, you know, coordinating with my engineers and learning from them. And I've become, here we are in in-house engineering service as well. And so I actually have a lot closer colleague friends, you could say, with our engineers than within our architects, just because our studio is much smaller. And they've helped me get a better holistic picture of the problems we're solving. I think the major lessons I've learned through all of this process, even though I thought I was managing my time properly, I think the test-taking process of balancing workload, there are some times I'm like, oh yeah, I don't think I have the energy to study tonight. And I really wish I'd built contingency into my study plan. I think I'll take so-and-so weeks, but sometimes it doesn't work out. I had built more weeks into that study plan, and maybe that would have, make me more confident before I'm taking the test. So that's something I've learned, not to, what's the word? Overestimate myself in terms of building that study plan time-wise, just like you would do in a construction schedule. So I cannot overstate the lessons that it's taught me about personal discipline and, you know, collaborating with, and then the last thing I really want to say is being transparent about your studying process. Maybe different candidates might think differently about this, but I have a few colleagues who want to keep it a secret and don't like telling or knowing other people knowing that they're studying for the test. One of them recently was like, hey, I'm doing this, but don't tell so-and-so, one of our shared principal. And I was like, well, I mean, what do you think he's gonna, I mean, you're not gonna be in the office all Monday, obviously, like, I mean, are you just gonna say you're taking PTO? She's like, yeah, I'm just taking time off. And I was like, I mean, Greg knows that I'm studying and, you know, he's helped and, you know, whether I fail or pass, I mean, that's totally normal. But I'm very transparent with my PMs and PAs and I'm studying, and I've seen how much I stand out and they appreciate the fact that I'm actually serious about this. So
it's funny that you say that, because we probably have 5 or 6 people in our office right now that are somewhere in the process. And some of them can't wait to come in and announce to the whole office, hey, I passed another section, and we all celebrate, and it's a big party in the office. And some of them want to just fly under the radar and don't want to bring any attention to themselves. And then at the end, they spring it on everybody. Oh, by the way, I'm a licensed architect now. And nobody even knew what was going on. And it's kind of a personal thing and personality. But I would encourage everybody to let everyone know what you're doing. You'll get more support from your coworkers and your bosses and whoever if they know what you're doing. And
I think it's a great morale boost for me personally, and also that they're you know, cognizant of the fact that I commute to Sacramento once a week, which is significant. From San Francisco, it's a 3-hour drive, and I'm doing CA at UC Davis. And the week before my exam, my principal was like, hey, I need you to go. You're going down this week, right? And I was like, Terry, I don't think I can do it this week. My test is on Monday. As I was getting just a week before the exam, I was like, is it okay if, so-and-so person goes in place of me? And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that. I was like, no. So she's like, of course. Yeah. Please, do it after the test. And, you know, obviously, she's like, I'm so happy you're studying, you know? So I think for that purpose as well, they like knowing, because you don't want to accidentally drop in your productivity at work either. So.
Yeah. People are so afraid of failure, but failure is part of the process. You just kind of have to embrace it and you learn from it, and just, you know, even if you fail, you're one step closer to passing and you learn something. So,
and don't throw in the towel.
Yeah, it makes you humble.
Absolutely.
Well,
I just want to say I'm really happy to personally. I've had such an impasse in the process it's something that was just out of my hands, but I'm happy to see that some of my fellow peers are licensed. So congratulations again to all of you.
Yeah, congratulations, and Melanie, I hope your tests continue to go amazing. But with that, we have reached time limit. So I want to thank you everyone for joining and kind of letting us pick your brains a little bit on the licensure process. Many of us will be right in the midst of it soon, so I appreciate this a lot. But yeah, that is all for today. Thank you again.